Hey guys, I'm Steve Freeman, and on this week's episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast, I sat down with the iconic rock group 3 Doors Down's Justin Biltonen and the band's tour manager, Chuck Pursel. We had a great conversation about the music business, life in an iconic rock band that sold over 30 million records, plus Justin launching his solo career. I think you're going to enjoy what you're about to see. I'm only going to share a little bit of it with you, so if you'd like to listen to the entire show, the entire interview, it's available everywhere you get your podcast. Don't forget while you're here to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave a comment on what you thought about this episode. Enjoy.
This is the Steve Freeman Podcast.
All right, we are back with our first... Well, it's not our first episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast of 2020. We had one last week, but the first episode back here in the new studio, which I'll be happy with for about 4 weeks. And then I'll be on to something else. I'll want something else. But it's also a special episode that it's our first guest in the new studio. And I want to welcome in Justin Biltonen from 3 Doors Down. Also, we're going to get into his solo career. And Chuck Pursel is 3 Doors Down's tour manager. We're going to get into touring. We're going to talk about artist management. We're going to get into all of that kind of stuff. But I want to welcome you guys. Justin, Chuck, thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much.
Hey, man. Thanks for having us.
So we were talking a little off camera. We're going to get into some of that too, because I really think it's valuable for people to hear and listen to. I want to ask how to say, because I did a little bit, I did research. Sometimes, most of the time, I don't prepare worth the fuck for any of this, but today I did a little bit of preparation, and I'd seen some interviews that you had done. So walk me through how a guy from North Carolina that plays lead guitar winds up playing bass in one of the biggest rock bands in the last 20 years.
I don't know. It's still kind of a blur, but
you still don't know either, do you? I don't know.
I feel like I've told the story a couple times, different interviews and stuff, and it's always, I think of something else that might have been adding to it. But long story short, I played in a band, and at the time we had the same management as 3 Doors. This was like 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And Chris Henderson, our guitar player for 3 Doors, he has a studio out in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and he started recording us. And through that, I started, being in Nashville a lot more. I was kind of the point man for all of our business stuff, and I was just here all the time. I became friends with everybody. Started going to like the Better Life Foundation stuff that we do, and I do a little bit of leather work as well. So I was like doing different stuff for, just like whatever VIP thing they had going on.
Very cool.
So through that, I just kind of became friends with everybody, and I was just kind of around, like not strategically or anything, but like they'd have some kind of event and they'd invite me out, and we were recording with Chris, and we'd keep in touch. And
then the opportunity, and they needed a bass player. Yeah. We don't have to go into all that.
You can Google search that.
Yeah, you can Google search that.
So they contact me, and they're like, "Hey, take this serious. Like, we like you. You're kind of around anyways, and
right,
get along with everybody." And I had some experience traveling and playing, and it wasn't just like some kind of, hey, we don't know if this guy can do stuff.
Right,
like,
right.
He's got experience. He does get in the studio, like.
Which you would be surprised. I get a lot of emails from players, which I find odd at times, because yes, I can play any instrument you put in my hand, but I'm not a session player. I'm not a stage player. I've never been in a band. I've produced a lot of big records, and I've written a lot of big hit songs, but I'm not that guy. But I get a lot of people, hey, how do I make it in Nashville as a musician, like as a studio player, or I want to come and get into a band? And it's like, I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I know you must be present to win, right?
Yeah. Relationships, man.
It is
very much relationships. Most of this business is.
Yeah, I mean, it is 110, and you're the perfect example of that. You were kind of doing your own thing.
Yeah.
And there was no, I want to be in this band, or you had your own thing.
Yeah. At no point was I ever like, oh man, I want to go join a legendary rock band.
Right. Right.
It was such a kind of crazy circumstance thing, blessing, like all this kind of stuff mixed together that just, it was right place, right time.
Let me ask you a question that I think people that are listening are are asking or would want to ask. When you got that opportunity, what was the thought process in your head of like, okay, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to do this myself. I want to be the guy out front. I want it to be my songs I'm playing every night. How did you reconcile that among yourself to go, no matter how bad I want that, I'm going to take this opportunity?
I think that's kind of always sort of been the thing that I've had in my mind is like, yeah, it's great. Like I obviously want to do my own thing as well. But you just kind of, for the music business, what I saw whenever I was, coming up and still, like every day there's something, like jump on the opportunities that arise. You never know where it's going to take you. Like you can't just, some band came up, hey, we need a rhythm guitar player for a couple shows, like.
So you kind of saw,
would you say no?
Right. Yeah. You saw every one of them as a stepping stone. Yeah. It's like, this is helping me get where I want to go.
Yeah. And not even necessarily in like this big strategic, like, okay, if I get here, I can get here. It's like, let's see where this goes. I mean,
fluid.
You'd be crazy to turn something like that down, no matter how bad you want to be the next Keith Urban. If someone came and was like, hey man, we need a lead guitar player, we need this, we need that, like we need somebody to be our tour manager this week. Like, can you come in and like we'll pay some money, just hit the road with us and help us out? Like,
well, man,
give a shot.
That is so valuable because one of the things when I'm working with artists that I tell them all the time is they need to be moldable.
Yeah.
You cannot set this thing in your head of this is success. And this is the only definition of it, and this is the only path to it. And if I deviate from that path, then I'm deviating from my goal. And it's like, look what that has done for you. You wanted to be an artist. Well, you are an artist. And just because you started playing bass for 3 Doors Down doesn't make you any less of an artist. And it's exposed you to things that you might not have ever been exposed to.
Oh, yeah.
As a solo artist, not taking advantage of that opportunity and going your own way. I mean, you've been all over the world and I think that's such a great takeaway. I think that's great for people to hear is that, yes, you had your own thing and you still do. We're going to talk about that. But what an opportunity like that can, and being fluid, being moldable will allow you to do to take advantage of opportunities. Yeah. And I know there are things we're not going to talk about, and so we're not going to get into that. But I do want to talk about your solo career because I think it's very interesting that you have a perspective that most people don't. And I think that perspective is, yes, I am in one of the biggest rock bands of the last 20 years. I am also a solo artist. It's two totally different lifestyles. It's two totally different how people treat you. And I'm anxious to hear your story in that transition of going, okay, I've been with the band now for 6 years, but I kind of still want to do my own thing. It's not like the band's out playing every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. So you've got free time, and it's like, okay, so some of that focus comes back to you and it's like, okay, now I can focus on my own career. Walk me through a little bit. Did you go through any kind of shell shock when you had been doing this and traveling around the country and first class treatment to now all of a sudden I'm Justin the solo artist?
I wouldn't say it was necessarily shell shock. I think a lot of it was like having the courage to do that aspect of it, just kind of completely starting over.
Right.
So everybody's like, oh, how's it not being on a bus? I'm like in my truck driving to Florida and driving up. Like I've got shows coming up at the end of this month up in Chicago. I'm just going to jump in the truck, throw my guitar, take my T-shirts and go play for whoever will listen kind of thing.
Okay. So what are you drinking? What are you taking? Because see, that is such a thing is that again, especially new, that they have this picture of success, and that's riding in a Prevost. That is the famous Mariah Carey M&Ms with no red M&Ms or whatever it was. And that's that. If it's not that, then I'm not doing this successfully, or I'm not successful. And to me, it's a willingness to sacrifice. Yep. That is the one key that every artist that is not successful is missing. Either one, they've misidentified the definition of what success means for them, or
that's a big one.
They're not willing to sacrifice.
Right.
And to me, with somebody like you do get the luxury of having that on one side when you're out with Three Doors. But for you have that willingness to sacrifice to go, okay, I've got the show. The show is the definition of success. The show is my opportunity to get up there, develop new fans, sell merch, sell music, and get people to know who I am. The sacrifice is not hopping on that bus and hopping in the truck. Yep. So what is your thought process, and how can we communicate to so many artists that are listening that want to play on stages half as big as you've been able to play on, to go, look, if it's good enough for me, it is definitely good enough for you. And this is something you need to learn. I've got shows. I'm not renting a van. I'm not renting a trailer. I'm not taking a U-Haul. I'm going to hop in my truck, and however I need to get there, that's how I'm going to get there.
Yeah. I think kind of what I always tell myself, and what I tell, anybody that's asked me that question, are you in love with the idea of fame, or are you in love with the music that you make? And I'm absolutely in love with what I do as a solo artist, what I do with Three Doors. Even if the whole Three Doors thing just poof overnight went away, I'd still be playing music every possible chance I could. I'd be writing songs every single day. And I think that's what keeps me, whenever we're not on the road, I don't have the Prevost, or we're not flying somewhere exotic. It's like I'm gonna ride up to Indiana and play for whoever will listen. And it's because I love and believe in my songs, and I want people to hear them.
Do you think your solo career makes you better in the band?
I think it helps. It gives me definitely a different perspective on how all the stuff works and where it comes from. And then, performing in any aspect, you're practicing, you're working on that craft. And I think that both of them kind of lend well to each other, because playing with Three Doors, I really learned how to put on a professional show.
Right.
I carry that into my solo stuff when I go up, and even if I'm playing for 50 people at a bar, there's a specific idea that I have for myself that I want to convey, and I get up there and I do it, and make sure I don't get drunk, and make sure people, enjoy what they're hearing.
Yeah, the no drinking thing. I've had that out with multiple artists back when I had my record label before we sold it. That was one of the toughest things. Was, guys, this is if you worked at McDonald's, you wouldn't show. Well, if you worked at McDonald's, you might show up drunk. But if you had a regular job, you wouldn't show up drunk. So that is a big thing. Yeah. That's a because you are there as a professional. Mm-hmm. You're there representing yourself. Which, when it's just you've got a lot you're representing. Yeah. And it's interesting to me, that transition of being able to do it one way on one scale, and then backing it down to just you. What are your goals as far as your solo career? Like what's your definition of success? And how do you hope to get there?
That's a great question. I'd love, for me personally, to be able to have a song on the radio, on something that people can hear. And I have songs on Spotify and everything. And then be able to get out and open for some of the people that I've been inspired by. Right. Especially in the country world or Americana world. Right now, I feel like success has kind of different stairs that you kind of get to.
Sure.
It's kind of an always evolving thing. Of course, everybody would be like, man, I'd love to be selling out arenas and making millions of dollars, but that's pretty far goal. So,
and it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
Just because something's unrealistic doesn't mean that it's not going to happen or hasn't happened. But it's almost like that, what is it? Plan for the best, prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of the things that you do on social media. And I think that you approach social media better than most artists do. Most artists have no fucking clue.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Which is probably that side of it is probably why you do it better than most. because most think they know what they're doing because they've been told, or God forbid, they've hired somebody that's told them what to do. Yeah. And those people don't know either. I mean, they graduated Belmont 6 months ago and they've been given the keys to our industry, which is a whole nother conversation that we could get into. But, you know, it's Chuck and I were talking outside that unfortunately, I had said in a podcast or video not long ago, I mean, your cell phone is the new radio. It's the newspaper. It's the magazine. Yep. All of those things are going away because whether we like it or not, music is being made now for 12 to 21 year olds. And if you look at the demographics of the different platforms, you know, Instagram's 18 to 34, and you've got Facebook that's 25 plus, and really now in 2019, it's like 35 plus. So for you as an independent artist, which one of those demographics are you trying to hit? Because, and I don't want to offend you by saying this, but you seem to me like you are interested in making music for more mature people. Yeah. That not just giving some bullshit song that hits people right here between the eyes that they don't have to think about, but you seem like you are interested in making real music. Yeah. I'd definitely say I'm kind of shooting for more mature audience just because I'm 34. I've been around for a second. Right. I've been on the road. I've traveled. I'm not going to write the "Hey Girl" up in a bar song just because it's not me. So, I mean, if somebody wants to sit down and write it for somebody else, cool. And like, I'll write a party song, whatever you guys want to do, but it's just not where I'm at in my life. And I would feel so like just wrong getting up there and like trying to sing something like that or put something out. Do you feel like you would be being somebody else? Yeah, absolutely. And playing artist. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that. Yeah. It would feel so fake and it's just not me. And I think that's another approach that I've taken this, and might shoot myself in the foot at some point, but like, I'm not going to put out songs like that and not going to play songs like that. So, well, speaking of, keep doing my thing. Somebody goes and they look up Spotify. What are they going to find if you could like put into a sentence or two what sums you up as an artist? What do you think? How would you identify yourself as an artist? I don't know. That's kind of, I feel like I've got this kind of country thing with a lot of Americana mixed in, but then a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily say throwback, but like a lot of the stuff that I was inspired by is stuff I grew up with, like a lot of the 90s, 80s country. Right. So some of the songwriting stuff kind of comes from there too. I like telling stories. I like songs that might have some kind of meaning to somebody, right. They have a meaning to me. So
best word for you as an artist is versatile. I've seen him on stage as a country artist. I've seen him on stage as a rock bass player. Right. Two different personas. Same guy. Same guy. Person. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Which I tell artists all the time, and this is the one piece of advice they want to take the least. And that is do away with identification. Do away with the box. The more you put yourself, the minute you tell somebody I'm a country artist, you just alienated 50% of people. For country fans, if you tell somebody you're a pop artist or a rock artist, you eliminate those people. I always think it is so wise for the artist. Let people put you in the box they want you in. Because like you as an artist, do you really care what they think you are? No. Beyond awesome or beyond great or beyond somebody that makes music that I like? Do you give a shit one way or the other? If they say, oh, well, Justin's a rock artist or he's a country artist, you can't lose. I guess you can't lose a race you never try to run. Mm-hmm. You can't be considered a failure at something. I'm not trying to be the biggest country artist. I'm not trying to be the biggest rock artist. I'm trying to be who I am, and because I was listening to some of your stuff this morning and I hear a lot of the 90s. Cool. A lot of the 90s country, yeah. Which I mean, that's what I grew up on, right? Yeah. I mean, it was the Travis Tritts and Tracy Lawrence and Clay Walker and Tracy Bird and all that. That's what I grew up on. Yeah. And so I can identify with that. But I also hear you using and doing in the production, a lot of more modern stuff, but it still has the feel of a lot of melody, choruses that people can identify with, but also, stories. Is it story? Very good. Story. Yeah. I mean,
especially if you're going to aim anywhere near country, if you don't have a story, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know,
all about storytelling.
You're doing the new country.
Well, I think there's too many. Well, to me, there's too many artists trying to fit into country because it's a smaller pool to swim in. And people think that it's easy to be a country artist. So it's like, I'm going to go be a country artist. The fans are loyal and it's easier to break it.
Talking crossover into pop. Like that's what I see a lot of. It's like,
well, yeah. I mean, because, you know, let's face it. I mean, country, and this is the bad thing about the box. I mean, you take country music, most top selling artists, the A-list artist, struggle to sell 1 million copies of a record. And yeah, maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road, they go double platinum or triple, but very rarely. I mean, that's 5 artists that go beyond platinum. And they start wanting to get into pop because if in pop music, well, I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but the industry standard was platinum. And in pop, if you go platinum, you failed. Mm-hmm. The record label's still out a couple $1 million if you only sell 1 million copies. So I get why country artists want the allure and the perception of what being in the pop world brings them, because I find most artists are more interested in the perception of fame than the reality of success. Absolutely. It's all about what it looks like to other people. Yep. It doesn't matter if the tour really made money. Because I was talking to a pretty well-known artist not long ago, and it was a private conversation, so I won't mention any names, but he had a very large tour and was basically saying that the tour broke even. They didn't really make money. I mean, when you watch the concert DVDs and you see all the you would think, oh my God, this made millions and millions of dollars. But it didn't. It barely broke even.
The expenses behind putting on.
I want to talk to you about that.
I mean,
being a tour manager,
everybody thinks, you know, these guys are walking in, they're raking in the money. I mean, there's artists out there that are making $1 million a night in merchandise alone.
Right.
And that's great. But you are also rolling in 30 buses. You probably got 50 people on your crew, trucks. There's so much that goes behind it. The expenses, that all comes out of the artist's nut. So, I mean, it's not the money that people think it is. Now, keep in mind with the way the music business is evolving right now, it is probably one of their biggest cash cows because record sales aren't doing it.
No.
I mean, you look at the new generation. The new generation's doing it right. Okay. And that's what you and I were talking about a little bit outside, is everything is changing in this industry. The record labels, the management companies, the booking agents, all of them are sitting back going, okay, what's going to happen next? As things become more and more irrelevant, meaning certain media formats and stuff that we discussed earlier, these kids that are monetizing YouTube, that are monetizing Spotify, that's where it's going to be. Well, and touring is going to be a big part of that.
Well, to me, touring is the main thing, because if
it's your main,
how do you build a fan base, like a real fan base? You can have huge social media numbers. Mm-hmm. There's a huge pop act that's out right now that is just blowing through the roof. They have well over 10 million followers on Instagram and every other. So they're huge. Yeah. They were doing a big tour last summer. And I think the show that drew the most people they drew 110 people at the main lead singer's hometown.
Wow.
And I think that's an issue, because you go back 10 years, 15 years, the way, especially venues, promoters, bars and clubs, you had to be on the Billboard chart. It was like, we'll stretch it to 40. Mm-hmm. And that's, if you want to make any kind of money, you have to be in the top 40. And that was the litmus test. If you're not there, you can come play for free, but we're not paying you. And now it's almost like they don't care anything about the chart, because there are artists out there selling out arenas that have never been on the Billboard chart.
Exactly.
And so now you've got all these people putting into Spotify numbers and social media numbers. But now we're starting to see a problem where promoters are buying acts based on their social media numbers and realizing that those are inflated as well because people aren't showing up. So it's like, I was telling some artists the other day, you want to have as small of a fan base on social media as possible, as long as they're engaged.
Yeah.
1,000 fans can change your life, And I heard Doug Stone tell a story once that Better Off in a Pine Box was dead. The single, they had put it out and it was like dead at number 30 and it wasn't going anywhere and the record label was going to pull it. And back then we didn't have social media. I mean, it was a plea direct to fans. So every radio interview he would do, he would encourage fans. They sent out, that's back when we had real mailing lists, and they would physically put a stamp on it and send it out to their fans. And he sent out a letter that was like, please call your radio station and ask for this song. And he said his fans engaged. He didn't have a large fan base, but the fan base that he had engaged. And it took that song all the way to the top and gave him a career for the rest of his life. Yep. Now. Doug
was actually the first artist I ever toured with.
Really?
Yep. Spent 5 years with Doug.
Doug's a unique guy.
He's an individual.
Love you, Doug. But I imagine we both have some stories there that we probably shouldn't tell. Great artist, though. Great songs. Incredible great songs.
Balladeer, man. He had a great voice. Yeah.
Still does. I mean, kind of, sort of. Okay, not so much. God, Doug Stone was amazing in the 90s and 2000s.
He was. He was probably the top balladeer in that time.
Totally. There was, and unique. You knew the minute you knew it was a Doug Stone song. Yep. It was great.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for checking out a little bit of this week's episode of the Steve Freeman Podcast featuring Justin Biltonen and Chuck Pursel from the multi-platinum selling rock group 3 Doors Down. Don't forget, while you're here, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please leave a comment below. And remember, if you'd like to listen to the entire show, the entire interview, you can find it everywhere you get your podcast. And when you get there, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Guys, see you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining us for the Steve Freeman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow Steve on social media at the Steve Freeman.